Hello, Animosaurus World. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm very lucky today to have in the studio with me, well, not really in the studio. I mean, we're kind of still doing our social distancing thing. But I'm lucky to have Luke Flanagan with me. Now, Luke, what is your actual technical title now?
Technical title is Lead Layout.
Lead. Ah, cool.
Yes,
Lead
it's pretty
layout.
exciting stuff.
Yeah, nice, nice. Now that is Luke is actually down lead layout for the mill in Adelaide. So very lucky to be able to actually just Skype you in and have a quick chat. So thanks for joining me.
Yes, we've still got to be in the safe distance zone, so we hope the
Yep,
family is all well and healthy.
yep. Everyone's got to look out for each other. All right,
Sure do.
so for everyone who's actually watching this, who's never heard of you before, which is probably not that many people, who are you and how did you become where you are?
Or probably anyone that's probably not in layout or previs at the moment.
Yeah,
Um, they'll take you way back, shall we? Way back.
way back in story time. Here we
Yeah,
go.
way back in time. I would have been probably my earliest memories of being involved with anything to do with sort of animation was actually Walt Disney coming
Ooh.
into my living room and telling me how they make the multiplane camera. That's one of my earliest memories, I think. So
Ooh.
black and white footage, Walt Disney
Yep.
walking me into the Walt Disney studio about how they make their films. It's pretty exciting stuff.
So that
I
would
think
have
it's a good
been,
place to start.
yeah, that would have been with the glass and the camera on the top to actually see those
Yep,
ones. Yep, yeah, I must
yep.
have seen the same movie.
Yeah, I think it was around. I think they were sort of featuring Pinocchio at the time. Obviously, it was not the time Pinocchio came out, but that was sort of one of the first ones I think they did with the multiplane potentially.
Yeah, right. Because you were
We'll probably have to cut that actually because it's probably wrong.
ah, yeah, but you were actually because you're not born in a big city or you're not really you're not from like Sydney or Disneyland or anywhere like that. You're actually from quite a small little place too.
No, that's right. Yeah, I grew up in Newcastle, so Steel City when I was growing up. Grandfather was involved in the steel industry as well.
Yep.
Um, so it's a long way from being involved in any sort of Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
But that was sort of my first sort of introduction to it. And I was always, from that moment onwards, was hooked into animation and storytelling. So a
Yep.
lot of drawing, a lot of Looney Tunes cartoons, a lot of watching the videos, stepping step by step on the VHS, drawing what I could see, trying to get movement and personality into the drawings and tell stories
Yep.
is sort of where I started. And it just sort of grew and sort of blossomed from there.
Yeah. So even when from straight out of school, did you get straight into animation then, or did you actually veer off and come back to it, or did you go straight into a college to study?
No, so there wasn't much around. I could have moved to Sydney, I guess, but I really wasn't ready for that at the time. So I studied graphic design at Newcastle Uni, and that was one of the only classes that had 3D animation as a component. So I sort
Ah.
of considered doing film, and that would have been a Bachelor of Fine Arts and film, or I could go the graphic design way and visual communication, which seemed more along my skill set. So
Ah,
I was
okay.
already doing a lot of sort of advertising work for like local soccer clubs and things like that, and sort of merging the art and the brand storytelling together felt like a more way to package my skills and also get a job at the end of it potentially.
Ah, yep, yep. And did and
And
did you get into that then marketing side once you finished?
I did. I finished up uni, got a job with Synchro Design, which was connected to 3D Paint and Color at the time.
Yep.
So we did all of their marketing, and they had their own list of clients as well, which is a really great first job to have.
Ah, cool, cool.
Yeah,
And
so a
that
little bit of advertising, a lot of marketing, and it was all about that sort of brand storytelling was their focus. So it's not only putting out brochures and sort of those old sort of sales tactics, big starbursts and stuff like that. It was more definitely on the sort of the corporate identity and visual communication line.
which
So it's
which
pretty lucky
is
to get that.
yeah, which is really big now when you start looking at like social marketing. It's more about the story you tell as a whole rather than that big burst as well. So
Yeah, that's right.
so that gets you into Newcastle working, or in the fringes, I guess, of special effects or storytelling. So from Newcastle, what happened then? Because eventually you got to get out of Newcastle. There's not a big animation industry in Newcastle.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be a good place with the lifestyle that we have. It's a great place to grow up, a little bit like Adelaide in that sense.
Yep.
Sort of a smaller town, but lots of really good beaches, good community. But yeah, not much animation,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I ended up bailing out and doing the working and traveling.
Ah, cool.
Sort of
Okay.
all over Europe. I stayed in London for a couple of years. Did a little bit of design and advertising work when I was there. Not a
Yep.
lot, but sort of enough to sort of keep my hand in the game, I guess you'd say. A lot of photography as well, and got sort of more involved in the photography and video side, because when you're traveling in Europe, you've got so much history and so many beautiful places you go and see. There was a lot of that.
So did you just take off? You just said, "All right, look, I need to go for an adventure to go look for stuff."
Yeah, I sort of felt like I needed to fill up that, like your sort of your bank account. I know Jake Parker talks a lot about your creative bank account, and it sort of felt like I needed that sort of new sort of breath of life into my creativity, and something to pull on that wasn't just sort of my childhood and what I was doing at the time. I'd been involved in music and a lot of bands, and played sort of up and down the East Coast, and that was really great. But it sort of felt like you sort of needed more, and sort of needed to have my work be, to have more in the work. It doesn't have to be across the other side of the world that it was for me. But that seemed like as far as I could probably go before I started coming back, and sort of get out on my own as well, move out of home. And then it's not just moving out of home, then it's moving out of home and overseas to really make a go of it myself. And like it was just brand new experiences all the way around.
Yep. Yep.
And it was really beneficial in that way. And it really, what I do still miss about sort of being in Australia is that sense of the depth of the history that Europe really has, and the story that's connected to almost every street corner, especially in and around London. It was really, really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Cool. So that gets you to then leading into getting back to Previs. So did you actually head straight into
Yeah.
Previs? Because a lot of people
So,
take a roundabout sort of way. They start off like me. I started off in animation, got into Previs. How about you? How did you
Yeah.
get into it?
So this is all part of the sort of the winding road of getting into this sort of industry. So coming back from Europe, wasn't really sure where to sort of go next. Other than that, I wanted to be involved in animation and not the design world anymore.
Oh,
So we came back straight away, spent a bit of time with the family, and then moved to Melbourne, who had a good course at the Academy of Interactive Entertainment, which is what I signed up for.
yep.
So that it was a private college at the time. It wasn't sort of HECS or help fees. So mum and dad helped me out with a loan to get into the course, which was really
Yep.
great. And you had to submit your folio as well. So they weren't just taking anyone in. You had to do the interview, submit the folio, and have an interview as well to show that you were really committed to doing this course and getting as much out of it as you could put in.
Yeah, right, right. Oh, cool. Okay, so that gets you down into Melbourne with another course that focused on the more of the 3D aspect or the 3D story animation parts, which was sort of filling out your skill set.
Yeah, that's right. So I was focused on the Cert 4 off screen. It was a 2-year course, but the first year was that sort of really broad education. So from modeling all the way through to lighting and rendering, and that good foundation of across the skills has been the most helpful in doing previs and layout later on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Ah,
So because I always wanted to be in sort of directing and story and animation in particular, breathing life into characters is super exciting, and I still find it exciting. But after that, my first gig was in motion capture.
oh, okay. Yep.
So it sort of took a left turn there, and I sent out my first reel, which is pretty horrific now to
Yeah,
watch.
you don't
You
look
see
at that.
all the details, all the problems now.
Yeah, talking about a reel, because like
Yeah.
you said, we do things so much differently now, but you still need a good constructed reel. So your
That's right.
reel was actually what got you called up from Melbourne. Like you posted your reel to Sydney. Did you have a
Yep.
contact from there, or did you just see an ad for that, or how did you actually
At
get onto that role?
At the time, I think I did the what I don't advise now is sort of sending out to almost everyone. But that being said, it was everyone that was doing the kind of work that I really wanted to do. So what's worked really well for me, even to get that first job, was it wasn't just finishing up the college course in the year and then sending out what I had. It was, yeah, sure, you've graduated, that's great. And then I animated every single day after that. We had like the amazing book by Richard Williams to follow. I was doing all the exercises through there, all the different walks, all the different timing, spacing, a little bit of camera stuff there as well to make the animation look what I thought was pretty good, and do different cuts of different angles, trying to sort of tell at least little stories with the anim tests rather than sort of the talk to camera. There's one of talk to camera in my reel, but trying to get body and like into my dialogue tests as well.
Oh yeah, you try to get
And constant practice.
yeah, trying to get the emotional expression without dialogue.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And trying to get the bit of pantomime in there as well. Trying to, at least at the time, show a broad range of skills. We had sort of a flour sack test and a dialogue test, and trying to bring it all kind of together into a package.
Yep. Yep.
And I found a mentor in Melbourne as well, who was an ex-teacher at AIE. The lecturer that I had left to go back to the industry, and he connected me with someone there. So I was really lucky to have that external influence that I could send and say, hey, what do you think? I'm trying to focus on, this is where I'm trying to go. And then he could sort of steer me in the right direction of what I needed to work on, which was really beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than sort of floundering and trying to work it out. I sort of knew, obviously you see what's good in a movie, but it's sort of hard to know that gap between where you're at when you're hitting the boundary and hitting your sort of wall to how do you get from here to there. And that's where finding
a good mentor
with more experience and a good mentor has been really helpful.
Yeah.
I think that was what sort of gave my reel at least that little bit more cohesive, sort of a more cohesive approach.
Mentors are really underrated in actually finding them because they can, not only do they give you the technical direction, which you just might not have yet, but they can also, like you said, they can give you like the soft skills as well, like they can introduce you to people. Finding a good mentor is a great leg up in any industry, so not just in animation, but any industry you're actually wanting to focus on. If you can find a mentor who's in it, I think it's one of the best ways of actually learning is by finding someone to help teach you who's already done it. So, I'd
like to think that's gotten easier these days. I'm not 100% sure if it has. It feels like that sort of communication, and there's so many ways to contact people now, and individuals are or like yourself, we're doing these interviews now. There's so much more information out there now than I think there was at the time.
Yeah. Yep.
And they said, well, we don't have anything in animation.
Yep.
But what we are setting up was Happy Feet 2 in motion capture in a brand new stage in Sydney. We can see you've got potential, but how do you feel about coming in, learning the motion capture side of things? We need someone that has an animator's eye to augment the performances that we have. So to make them more Penguin-like.
Ah, cool.
And it was it was also, because it was such a dance-heavy movie, that really relied on my background in music as well. So what I really enjoyed about being in motion capture and then later moving into lensing and then moving into previs in my next job was that, my next role at Dr. D at the time, because I was there for 2.5 years, it sort of encompassed all three of those things, was that it really relied on everything that I was passionate about.
Yeah.
Because it relied on cameras, relied on story, relied on animation, blending the performances, working with the choreographer directly to cut up all of the action, cut up the animation.
Yep.
Sometimes to the subframe level to make sure the taps were happening at the right time. And it's really combined all of the skills that I'd gathered thus far into that one role.
Ah, wow. Okay. That's pretty unique to being able to try and find something that actually does encompass everything. So that was a really cool 2.5 years then.
It was. I learned a lot. I grew a lot.
Yep.
And I got to work, side by side with Dr. George Miller, amazing filmmaker, amazing storyteller, and to have him sitting just literally right beside you was a lot of pressure. And I didn't really feel that pressure at the time. He's such a generous human being. I look forward to hopefully I can work with him again in the future.
Yep.
But I learned so much of just the way he works with the story and works with the lenses and will sort of hunt for the exact right framing that he needs. All of that was such an educational experience as well, and I really take that with me everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. The influences that you capture, especially when you're on the job, you actually get to sit with people who are passionate. You learn so much more. Like a lot of people sitting outside think that you've got to learn the technical skills before you get into like this sort of craft, but it's actually doing the work where you actually craft and hone things that is where you sort of make it take form and take shape. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, and you learn that when you work with really good people. So
Yeah, and sort of showing that hunger as well in the early days. I think that's what they could sort of see from my reel, and well, that was back in the day of actually posting DVDs out as well.
oh wow.
And I flew up for the interview. I didn't realize at that time that you could. I'm not sure even if video calling was a thing, but I made myself more available and really showed that I was hungry for it and hungry to learn as well. So
Yep.
being really open-minded and not being super focused on what I thought I wanted has gotten me onto this path of a really great career so far.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And you hit on another really good point as well about being specific in the direction that you want to head, because it's really hard for people to get into, especially now the industry, it's changed so much, to actually go, I am a generalist. And I can do everything. I think that the all round generalist really has their roles in certain places, but there's a lot of places that won't look at a generalist, especially if you're aiming for a big studio and you want to work on feature films. Generally, they don't have a place for a generalist.
Yeah,
So
that's right. It's a really you got to have a lot of I guess you get a lot of broad skills, and then I guess more experience would help in a
yeah,
smaller studio. I think they say in business, it's like a T shape is what you should do. Is you sort of when you're diving into the water, you sort of dive in this way
yep,
first, so you can penetrate deep, and then you start to broaden out.
aha,
So if you can get
interesting.
in specifically, and then you can start to edge sort of either side, you start to learn those sort of periphery skills in that department that
Yep,
you get into in the first place, and then you can start learning even more, and then broaden out from there once you're sort of in.
yep,
But if you sort of go in with the broad skills, it's sort of more like a belly flop when you try to get in,
yeah, yeah. It makes it
and people
harder to
don't
get
really
in.
know where to put you. And I've had a lot of my friends try to apply. Oh, I'll just do anything. I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. And the reel says all of those things at once, and they
But
don't really get that same traction because it's, well, what are you good at, and what are you passionate about is even a bigger question. Like, what do you really want to do? What are you connected to? I think
yeah,
is really important.
yep. We can talk about how the industry changed, because that was
Yeah,
about the time the global financial crisis kicked in, and pretty much everything in
yeah,
Australia sort of settled completely. I know up here in Brisbane at that point, there was game studios leaving left, right, and centre, were just vacating completely. So was it
yeah,
similar down there in Sydney as well that you found?
yeah. There was a lot of potential in Sydney at the time, especially with Dr. D. I think they acquired Team Bondi, the games company. We did a bit of
Oh, yep,
testing for their next game as well, which was really exciting for us, in particular in the motion capture department, because we could do VFX, we could do animation, we can do games within that department. It sort of was like a
yep.
little nucleus of that, and a really, really great team, really
Had
experienced team.
had they just that was after LA Noir had come out, wasn't it? So that was for their next project.
Yeah, that was for whatever was coming next. I don't
After,
know if
yeah,
that was ever announced in the end, but it was pretty exciting stuff.
yep,
It
yeah.
was really exciting. So unfortunately, that's yeah, you said just before global financial crisis was happening, and Dr. D ended up shutting down,
Yeah. Yep.
and that sort of flooded the industry again. I think we were a really large team there to
Yep.
finish off Happy Feet 2.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, then
It
it
was a sad
makes
time.
yeah makes finding work in the industry harder when you've got. I mean, that's one thing which a lot of people don't think of, but the competition's actually really for if you're an artist. Job numbers are quite limited because there's really only in Sydney. There's only a couple of places which are always hiring artists. You've got to either be able to be really good and find yourself a permanent, consistent role, which really don't exist, or you've got to be
Yeah, that's
versatile
right.
to be able to take on different stuff. So what was your attack after that? What
I think because I was so sort of more specialized by that stage, so I sort of went in as the junior animator, and then went into motion editing, which was a lot of fun. Sort of augmenting those performances. We did a lot of work on the feet, and a lot of work on just making sort of them feel more penguin-like.
Mm.
And then I moved into the capture side. So that was working, direct with George, direct with the choreographers to build the performances up. So taking all of the takes, they might have taken 20 takes and said, well, I really like this gesture on this moment, or we need this part of the dance then to blend seamlessly with this part, and then we're going to go back to the other part, because it was all about the rhythm and all about the music at the time.
Man,
which is really
that sounds
awesome.
incredibly technical and time consuming, but awesome all the same time.
Yeah, it is, and it was such a good balance of sort of that technical part and the creative part. It was really great.
Yep. Oh, cool.
So so getting through sort of the different areas of the motion, I got to touch almost all the motion capture process, really. So I was not in sort of layout and previs at that time. We did a little bit in Motion Builder, but it was more all about the virtual production side of things. So we had the virtual camera on set, which got me more into the lensing side of things.
Yep.
But I was still very a motion capture person at the time.
Right.
So when Dr. D shut down, I think Weta was probably the only other place. And my daughter Eleanor had just sort of recently been born. So we didn't really want to move overseas. That felt like a really big jump from there. So we tried to stay sort of local in Sydney. We had a really nice house that were there and really good friends. So we wanted to sort of make it work and try something new. So I applied for different layout stuff. But because I hadn't really done it at that time and hadn't really done cameras sort of the whole time, it made it really difficult to get sort of previs and layout work.
Ah, okay. Is that then what led you to start looking overseas for more work?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I sort of relied on my design background again, and then combined that with the virtual production work that I'd done. Bought one of the first HDSLRs that had HD video, which was the Canon 550D at that time.
Right. Okay.
And started shooting things for real. So I did a couple of music videos and got more into the video content side of things. This was really early days. This was before any business was on YouTube, really.
Yeah, before YouTube even took off.
It was a really weird time because they were looking for any business wanted to do a proper, $100,000 commercial and put it on TV. That was the time.
Yeah.
That I was trying to do videography. Essentially, that word didn't exist yet.
Yeah,
You're
right.
still are you a cinematographer or are you an animator-ish? And I was somewhere kind of in the middle, and it wasn't until about 2 years later that I saw an ad with Ilion Animation Studios in Spain, and they wanted exactly what I'd done. They wanted character animation skills or experience. They wanted lensing. They wanted someone who had filmed for real using real cameras. They wanted someone who understood story and editing and cutting, which I'd done a lot of with George as well. So it just lined up perfectly.
Ah, cool.
And that's how I ended up getting back into the animation industry after a couple of years and working with Ilion in Spain.
Yep. You get to now that you're in Sydney with the house and that, you had family with you too, didn't you?
Yeah, so Eleanor was born midway through Happy Feet.
Happy Feet, yeah.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And so we tried to stay in Sydney. We're doing a lot of video content. We'd moved from Sydney back down to Melbourne, chasing the work with different businesses.
Yep.
So we'd set up house there, and we were doing like preschool. All that stuff was going really well. And then I saw the ad for Madrid. But this lines up completely with where I want to go and also my experience so far.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to go, and we all went together.
You took the whole family. You packed up everything.
Yeah, Ruth and Ella packed up everything really quickly. There was a long negotiation leading up to it, but when we finally got everything all lined up, it was, we need you here in 2 weeks. Said, maybe 3 or 4. Went, okay, 3 weeks is it. You need to be here and start because we have the director coming. You need to be here to meet him and get ready and get rolling on shots. So we packed up our house. We transferred our lease, packed up everything, and all went.
Wow. Oh,
Which was
and
really exciting. It was a huge mission,
yep.
but it was really, really worthwhile
And how'd you go with
to
this?
take the family.
Yeah, how'd you go with like getting over there? Did the studio help set you up in a house and that, or was it a unit, or how did the family go actually settling into Spain then?
Yeah, well, actually, part of what made it, well, we were trying to make my application sort of a no-brainer.
Yep.
And sort of not just showing the passion that we talked about before, that the skills are exactly what they need, what they're sort of looking for. The other part was that my wife Ruth is German, so we have the European
Connection.
visa but in connection there. So it's not just that they have to prove that they don't have a Spanish person that can do what I can do, that we can come as a spouse visa, and it's that one step easier for them. Or so I thought. But that was our idea, that it would be at least one step easier to have that sort of just more streamlined application.
Excellent.
Yeah, and they went, yep, no worries, that's great. Your paperwork will be like a week. And it ended up not quite being as easy as we all thought. But
nothing ever is, but they make it sound good.
It was great. Yeah. But the studio was really helpful bringing us all over. We had like the accommodation when we first arrived. Yep. It was pretty tricky finding a place with different language. We didn't know Spanish when we arrived. We had to learn it on the go as well as work.
Rough. Cool.
Yeah, it was a really exciting adventure. Eleanor ended up going to school for the year and a half. She went to preschool and kindergarten in a bilingual school, sort of Montessori-based school. So it was a little bit less pressure than going to full-on lessons, where she got to really just connect with other kids. They ended up making their own language half the time because they would know what they were talking about. They could learn a bit of English from her. She would learn Spanish from them. And it was a really good experience for all of us, I think, because we ended up making really good friends there that I've since brought back to Australia in different teams, and we're still in really good contact with all the crew there. Wow. It was really great.
Awesome. Yep. Oh, cool. So how was the transition then back into a complete animated feature? Because this time you're not working with, were you working with Mocap, Ilian, or was it complete keyframe animation?
No, it was full keyframe animation.
Yeah, so that would have been just a little bit of a small learning curve, kind of working with a new pipeline rather than a motion capture pipeline.
Yeah, that's right. And having to sort of go back to using that sort of animation skills again, blocking really strong key poses. Yep. And everything was really steppy, but it was all about just sort of that strong moment, that strong key pose, and really being able to tell the story from the storyboards. We'd get storyboards delivered from the States. We would do basically the whole process from the previous phase all the way through to final layout in our layout team.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so we got to touch. We'd get some pretty rough boards about what the action needed to be to take place.
Yep.
And then we'd do a location scout. We'd build anything we had to build for the environment, and then we would pass that to the environments team for them to work their magic while we continued on cameras. We would do sometimes just single frame CG boards to send back and get a buy off on where we were before we started animating anything.
Yep.
And just continually just work with the director either via video or when he was in-house in Spain to really build up the story. And he wanted to spend a lot of the time in layout to really build that foundation of the story. Okay. So by the time it went to animation and down the line, they had a really strong blueprint of what the film needed to be.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like personal choice. Yeah, I like spending time in layout because at that point, like you said, everything's still fairly rough. You haven't spent a lot of time on animation to get your characters moving smoothly, but you get the idea about how your camera is going to work and follow a character. I that's why I geek out around this time, is because you start telling your story from boards in 3D, but you're also working with the director to go, this is what he's trying to capture and the vision he's trying to capture right into this little space that you've got to work with, which you can still create. Like you said, you can block out some geo in the background and go, yeah, that's sort of what's going to be there. I kind of geek out on that sort of part.
Yeah, and it was really, really story-driven, really emotionally driven stuff. We were working with Dylan Brown for that film. So
Yep.
he was the animation suit on Finding Nemo,
Ah, right. Okay.
and I think Ratatouille. I'm not sure about that. So from his, I think he was a character animator before that, and then with animation suit Finding Nemo, and he was running the studio for Pixar Canada when that was around.
Oh, wow. Yep.
So he came from running that studio into the director's chair for this
Wow.
show,
Cool.
and it was another director that working so closely with him, you really learn a lot of sort of how to craft the story, and then because he sort of knows where animation is able to take it, it's just providing those moments and being really emotionally connected to how fast the pacing is of the edit then, and how nice the cinematography needs to be. And we're focusing a lot on like Chibo Lubeski's cinematography, which is the first time we'd really use really wide lenses for this sort of animation, and like a lot of follow cams, and trying to emulate real camera movement even in the previous stage.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Cool. And that's why they really wanted you a real film, a videographer's eye to go along with it as well, because they were trying to emulate real cameras rather than just doing CG cameras.
Yeah, that's right. Because as soon as it felt too computery, it would just throw the whole sort of sequence off. It's like, oh, that just feels just too robotic and too CG or too linear, or it doesn't have that kind of handcrafted sort of feel
Feel.
of the movement.
Yep. Did you, with that, did you do any mocap camera tracking to actually give that camera feel to, especially like moments when you're moving the camera around, like track real life cameras and then put the movement back on a CG camera? Did you do any of that sort of stuff?
I think some of the team had experience doing it, but we didn't do any on that show. It was all keyframed animation for the camera.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
The labor intensity stuff.
yeah, it was really good.
Ex-
Well, obviously, it took a bit to get up to speed to the level that was sort of required across different sequences.
yep.
But once everyone got into the feel of what it needed to be, it moved pretty quick.
Oh, cool.
And we would
Excellent.
get the final after animation. We'd get all the caches back, and then be able to refine that camera movement even more.
More. Ah, cool. Yep. Yep. Okay. So yeah. So final layout actually came back to the same team to refine it again.
Yeah,
Nice. Cool.
yeah, you'd see your shots beautifully animated, and then you got to sort of do the little follows and little sort of noises, and
Mm.
sort of getting technical. You sort of move the pivots of the camera so it's more like on someone's shoulder, so you get these little translates happening,
Mm.
and yeah,
Nice.
it's really
Yep.
really nice stuff. And you don't often get, at least in visual effects on the VFX side, you don't get a lot of chance to do that. You're really working with what's been shot previously
Yeah.
on set.
Yeah. No, true. And you don't get to refine that much stuff in previs either, because previs you're just about, previous layout, you're about capturing it to start off with, and you haven't got the animation to do your fine tuning of it or anything like that. So yeah, cool. So that was
Yeah, I think we're really really lucky in that sense, that there was a round trip happening between us and animation and environments and scene assembly coming in. We're all sort of building this thing together. It
yeah.
was a really great environment, really great team as well.
Ah, cool. Yeah, it always makes a project more fun if you've got a great team to work with.
Yeah, it really is all about the people. At the end of the day, they sort
Yeah.
of say you could choose two things out of three, right? It's like the people or the money that you get, the salary,
Yep.
or the project. You've sort of got to choose two of those things. If you have good people and a good project, it's probably not going to pay that well generally.
Yeah.
But if it pays really well, it may not be something that you're really passionate about, or the team's horrible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're really lucky, and I think I've been mostly really lucky with my career to have really great people in the teams,
Yep. Ah, cool. So
and really passionate about the projects.
so how long did you end up how long did you end up over in Spain? Did you stay there after that first project, or what happened then?
I was there for a year and a half,
Yeah.
and the project was still going when I came back to Australia to work on Peter Rabbit.
Oh, okay. So back to Sydney again.
Yeah, and then back to Sydney. Animal Logic was one of the first places that I applied with as well when I got the job at Dr. D.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Animal Logic has just such a really great history of making amazing films,
Yeah. Yeah.
both animated and visual effects,
Yeah.
and advertising. I think at the time as well, they'd done a lot of really great advertising.
Yeah, like yeah, in Australia, I guess Australia being the small market that it is, everyone's sort of target. Animal Logic have been around the longest. I think they've been around the longest as a special effects house or an actual place. So most people think of it in Australia once you're in the industry to go, I want to work there. And you were working right at the front end of Peter Rabbit too. You were actually working before, like real previs before the cameras and everything got on the scene for that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of. It was more of a tech biz solution.
Yep.
So it was really we were sort of moving the house around. So before the set was built, we were sort of making sure that the blueprints and the plans would fit the cameras in where they needed to go eventually.
Wow.
As in addition to where are the characters going to be, how tall are they, how fast can rabbits really run, can we get the cranes and the cameras following the rabbits as they would run at a natural speed through the garden.
Yep.
Prevising a bunch of sequences, but it really was more about making sure that what was going to be built would provide the foundation of the film of what the director needed to achieve.
Cool. So
it was lots of fun. So we met at Flying Bark in between, right? So I did previs, jumped over to Flying Bark to finish off Mind the Bee 2, the Honey Games. That's our first project together, I think.
Yeah.
And then we worked together again on Peter Rabbit in the layout phase, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Is that when you kind of ventured towards Adelaide?
Yeah, as Peter Rabbit was winding down, RSP was winding up on some really exciting full CG camera work.
Yep.
So they're really well known for their effects and their lighting work.
Yep.
And they had managed to score a couple of really, really exciting shows. And they were looking for more of the previs and cinematography path into helping the client really visualize what they wanted to make before they even really knew what they kind of needed from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So that was
a really good mix of skills.
Yeah. So that drew back to pretty similar to what you were doing with Peter Rabbit then as well, just doing all the previous stuff before the camera work's actually taken place. And you were at RSP for a little while too.
Yeah, I did a year at RSP.
Yep.
And brought the family over again. We all packed up, moved out of Sydney.
Yep.
Arrived in Adelaide.
Yep.
Set up shop again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a couple of really exciting projects there.
Yeah, and you were there for a little while.
One of the most complicated that I've ever worked on. In fact,
is that the complicated shots or that you were working on?
It was one shot. I worked on it for probably 4 months. Ooh. It was 2.5 minutes, and it was one shot, just the one-er.
One shot for 2.5 minutes. Wow. Okay.
It's huge. Flying through space, underwater, sharks, back through space. There was a lot of elements that had to happen story-wise, and then a lot of cool stuff in between that they really wanted in there, and trying to craft a story, but then rebuilding the camera motion to really follow this character through his psychedelic journey was really, really interesting. And then trying to offer alternatives, and it was a really creative, dynamic process.
Yep.
But it took a long time to sort of nail down exactly what they needed in the movie.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, because that gets you down into Adelaide, because the big thing that sort of happened in Adelaide at that point in time was also a new studio sort of taking root there as well. Like the mill sort of started popping in. Did that pop in at the end of your sort of RSP tenure, or was that there kind of after your Rising Sun tenure?
Right in the crossover, actually.
Yeah.
There were sort of rumours happening for a while.
Yep.
And as my contract at Rising Sun was coming to an end, they gave me a call and had other really exciting projects.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I was sort of at the end of Rising Sun, I was sort of looking for more full CG work again and more sort of previs work away from visual effects, but then really enjoying Adelaide as well and what South Australia has to offer. So there were lots of sort of options on the table, and we decided to stay. Yeah. And joined Mill Film.
Ah, cool. Yeah, you touch on also what about, because Adelaide's not something that most people in Australia consider as a big city. What do you think life in Adelaide is like? Because you've been in Melbourne, you've been in Sydney, you've been in Newcastle as well. So you've seen a lot of Australia. So what's attractive about Adelaide?
Yeah, we didn't really know what to expect when we first took the job at Rising Sun. We knew it was going to be a good project and a good opportunity to work on that stuff. But life-wise, it is a small city. It's very, very laid back, which we really enjoyed after the hustle and bustle of Sydney. I really like being in Sydney, and I love being there. I love going back there. But this is just a very different way of life.
Yep.
In terms of as far as city is concerned. And what we really enjoy about just working in the city is in holidays and on weekends, you can get out of the city really quickly. There's lots of wildlife, lots of national parks, really great beaches around. And the work-life balance is a bit different here, which we really enjoy.
Oh, good. Because another thing which I know you touch on as well, like you touched on right at the start of it, was very much about storytelling and actually taking control of what you want and the experiences you want to get your hands into. And the one thing which I know you kind of really like as well is doing a lot of outside projects as well, outside like the main features and that, is you've been involved.
So having worked in Spain and having that really great experience working from sometimes the script pages, sometimes from the storyboards, and really being able to craft the film from the ground up and providing that blueprint was a really great experience. I really enjoyed being able to craft the story, work with the director, work with the artists, work with all the other departments, and I found that was the part that I really lit up with. So it really combined all of my skills, all of my interests and passions in story, as well as editing, as well as music, as well as acting, and being able to bring the best out of all the different performances and all the different artists as well.
Yep.
So eventually, we're sort of going down this road of trying to direct original stuff. So that sort of really whet my appetite for wanting to have more of sort of the fingerprints of the filmmakers and the artists in the content. So as much as working in visual effects and the VFX films that I've done since then have been great to work on, they're a different process. I've also been doing indie projects to keep my hand in not only that full CG side of things, but to be able to help indie directors bring their original visions to the screen.
Oh, okay. Is there one in particular at the moment which you're working on that you want to kind of expand on? Like how involved do you get with? Because when making films isn't just something that just kind of you click your fingers and there's a brilliant idea and it's down on script and it happens. So how long do
I wish that was the case.
Yeah. How long does some of these projects which you're working on, like you said, the indie projects in the background, how long are you working on these projects for?
So it's been a couple of years so far. So I got involved in the Artella platform, a little bit over 2 years ago, and it's recently changed into more of an indie studio situation. But for the last couple of years, it's been all original, independent projects, mostly animation, some VR, and some games as well. But the shows I've been involved with has been with Everett Downing, who recently just won an Academy Award for co-directing Hair Love.
Oh, cool. Yep.
Yeah, just really exciting. And he had his project on there, and I ended up leading the layout team for his show.
Oh, nice.
So that's currently wrapped up and in lighting and rendering at the moment, and sort of final look dev, which is really exciting.
Yep, cool. And then I know, because the one I want to touch on is like where you're heading with the When Thunder Roars, because I know that's almost your pet project at the moment that kind of keeps most of your attention. How is that actually going? How's development going along with that?
It's really exciting. It's a cause and a project that's really close to our hearts. I'm working with the writer.
So I know you've told me about a short projects that you've worked on, but I know you've got your fingers in one at the moment, which you've mentioned, When Thunder Roars. Can you tell me a bit more, tell the audience more about that one?
Well, what ties all of the films that I work on together, being a dad, being a storyteller, is I really want to make more meaningful content. So it's not just working on stuff that looks cool. It's really got to have that heart and a message in it as well. And that's the sort of stuff that I want to see more of in the world. And if I can be a part of bringing that to life, then I really want to be, a part of these different projects, whether it's other people's films and stories, or pretty much anything really. Any way I can help other like creatives get their stories out there, I'm more than happy to help. So I was put in touch with a writer in the UK who's written a really beautiful, really emotional story about a black orphaned rhinoceros. As soon as I had read the short story and then followed by the script, the main character, a little orphaned black rhinoceros, really just leapt off the page and really sort of grabbed me by the heartstrings. This is a story that needs to be told, particularly at this time when it's really strong themes about unity and community, friendship and family, and preservation and conservation of the rhinoceros as well. Not just the black rhinoceros as it is in this particular story, but all 5 species of rhinoceros are in dire need of help. So we hope by telling this story, which is from the baby rhino's point of view as he grows up, is it's really trying to evoking that empathy. We're trying to sort of capture hearts and minds through this story and hopefully really have a big impact. Because through the research for this project, what we discovered was that not only are the rhinoceros species really important to Africa, we don't want them to really ever be extinct, and the only way that we see them is through video. We want to see them and be able to experience them in person, and want our kids to be able to see them alive. We don't want them to become like the dinosaurs, where they just sort of become more like a fantasy creature. We want them to be alive and well. But what we discovered through the research is that they are a keystone species. So rhinoceros being in the savannah impacts every other species around them, including humans and including the climate crisis in general.
Yep.
Because they're kind of like elephants in that they are able to change the way where the grasslands go.
Yep.
And the savannas in Africa the savannas where they live are natural carbon sinks. So that actually sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere and prevents global warming. Yeah. So they are a pretty darn important species to protect and preserve.
Yeah, I've seen that one with the I think it was the wolves in around Yellowstone National Park as well. People were saying, right. When they reintroduced the wolves again, all of a sudden there was balance back in the environment, and where they thought that having the wolves in there would actually be detrimental, the wolves helped balance populations from everything that was eating all the plants on the ground, and all of a sudden there was grasslands growing again because wolves just brought balance back to the ecosystem. So that's what you're saying with the rhinoceros.
That's right. Yeah, the rhinos have the same impact, and it's really, really broad.
Yep.
It's just it's mind-boggling, really, that sort of these top species can impact the entire planet. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Wow.
And really, even more important that we do what we can now, not just in terms of the climate crisis, but also these specific species. And we put our efforts where it has the biggest trickle-down effect. And that's the sort of impact that we hope this film can have.
Yep.
Along the lines of trying to create meaningful content, is that really the best stories stick with us for generations. And it's not just making a donation of money towards the really great work that's happening. Being able to create a film like this will hopefully, as all goes well, will really impact not just our generation of people who watch this movie when it's done, but also their kids and their kids' kids can really enjoy good stories and hopefully enjoy Thunder and his world long after.
If anyone's listening. So if there's anyone listening who's actually got the same sort of passion or impact that they want to have, can they get in contact with you to just find out if they can be a part of your project or a part of that project?
Yeah, so my goal, like the other shows that I've been working with through Artella, like Pure, like Book of Mojo, we've had a really great global team come together. And I think that the global team can really have global impact, particularly in a project like this. So we're setting it up as 100% volunteer. We're volunteering our time and our skills to get this up and running.
Yep.
And we want to, really build that global team to help bring it to life.
Excellent.
So, right now we're looking to move into storyboarding pretty quickly and character design. And then beyond that, layout, animation, tech anim, light render, and all the rest of it. So it's very early days at the moment. We're at the beginning of this journey, really. But so far, it's been pretty exciting. I've had really great feedback from yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for the feedback on the story and the show so far.
Not a problem.
Chatting with Everett that I mentioned earlier. He's had some really great feedback as well on the story. Cool. The story guru.
Yep.
And it's really taking on a life of its own. The more and more people that get involved, the better the show will be.
Yeah, the different input they'll have. So I'll leave links down in the description below of the best way to get in contact with you if anyone's interested. With that, I'd say thank you so much for your time, Luke. You've covered quite a broad range of different kind of skills. You've got tidbits, you've got story, you've got everything packed into this episode. I think it's been amazing.
No, thank you very much. I hope it helps. And if anyone's got any other questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or just shoot me an email. I'm available. Always happy to help.
Excellent. So with that, until we see the next episode, thank you so much for joining me on Animosaurus.
Thank you.